So, hello everyone. My name is Mike Englander, co-chair of the Partner and Alliances Council at the Tutoria Breda Institute, a thought leadership non-profit institute with an aim to make the world a better and a safer place. To help in this regard, we focus our attention primarily on the twin critical priorities of AI and cybersecurity, with a series of task forces looking at different aspects of the subjects. Everywhere we look, there is a fundamental need for excellent cooperation between individuals and organizations. Unfortunately, the stats show that more than 80% of partnerships fail. So in support of our aim, the Council has been started where we endeavor to cross-fertilize knowledge, understanding, experiences, and ideas to try to improve on this terrible failure rate. Today, we turn our attention to the linked subjects of ecosystems and marketplaces. To help us decipher this, we have gathered a distinguished panel who I will now ask to introduce themselves before moving on to the panel discussions. For the audience, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat so that we can see them. David, could I ask you to kick things off and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm David Mauro. I'm Vice President of Business Development with NetGain Technologies here based in the Midwest of the United States. I'm also part of InfoGuard, which is the public-private coalition between the Department of Homeland Security and the private practice and private industry. So that way we could help shore up critical infrastructure. I'll turn it over to Lisa Wight.
Yeah, Lisa, thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Wight. I'm head and global VP of Global Partner Program Success and Distribution here at Ericsson. And we're very focused on the enterprise go-to-market and, of course, driving reach and scale through partnerships.
Thank you very much. Serdar?
Hello. So my name is Serdar Urcar. I'm for 30 years now in the IT industry. Currently, I'm the managing director of HP Turkey. I've spent 19 years in HP before. And then I left, and 6 and 7 years I spent a lot of time also in the startup ecosystem of Turkey, and I came back to HP. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Mike.
Thank you. I want to spend the first part of our time together really diving into the aspect of ecosystems, and then afterwards we'll go over to marketplaces. I know that they are linked subjects, but I would like to separate them a little bit. So the first question that I have for the panel is, why do you think that business partner ecosystems are important? Lisa, do you want to start us off on this? What's your opinion on?
Sure. I think there's a lot of importance in partner ecosystems, right? And it includes everything from a reseller, an MSP, ISV, a distributor, et cetera. And the reason it's important is it helps drive ease of business for the customer. It also helps drive reach and scale, right? And kind of the unification and unity across product lines. We see more and more portfolio offerings, and it's the best way to reach and satisfy customer needs.
So is it just from the point of view of the product packages, or do you think that there are other aspects, other benefits to it as well?
There's definitely other benefits as well. Not only are we seeing larger and larger portfolio solutions, if you will, right, which are cross vendors, but we're also seeing more and more engagement from a services perspective, where the customer wants that one-stop shop, and we've seen those partner-to-partner connections. That really started maybe a decade ago, but this probably the last 24 months, that's become such a critical component of making the customer happy. So it's really trying to solve what the customer needs versus just one product or just one piece of service.
So the famous customer-centric equation that we're always looking for.
That's right. They're in the middle.
They're in the middle. There we are. Serdar, what about from the point of view of you're looking at from the aspect of Turkey, Middle East, other areas. Do you see the same sort of importance in your region?
For sure, for sure. I mean, when I think about business ecosystems and why do we need them, the first thing that comes to my mind is the resources. Even the largest companies on earth doesn't have enough resources versus the opportunities they face. So you need to go ahead and leverage third-party resources. That's why you need business ecosystems. The second thing that comes to my mind, the complex skills are rarer and rarer in the industry. It's very hard to find the right sales and technical skills, and complex skills are the way to distinguish yourself from your competition. So since you cannot have all these complex skills in your organization, you need a business ecosystem and you need to leverage their skills. The third thing is from my perspective, is demand generation. Also, demand generation, when you try to do it only with your own means and resources, again, you're limited. But if you have a business ecosystem and every member of the ecosystem focuses on demand generation with joint resources, then the possibility to create bigger demand for your products and services is out there. And fourth dimension for me is the services capabilities. Again, I mean, when I'm thinking about from a perspective of a vendor, you cannot build all the services capabilities, or if you even build them for emerging markets, for example, they are not cost optimized. So you need to go out and leverage the services of an ecosystem around you so that you can complement your product and service and you can easily go to market. But all in all, I think Lisa said this well, if I combine all these factors, I think we will arrive at the customer experience. In order to create a more complete, more holistic, more comprehensive customer experience, you need a business ecosystem.
But one thing I'd like to come back on is that, because I agree with you entirely, but that's also that you have to agree to share. Because you were saying, for example, generating demand. That means that you're generating demand not just for, say, HP, but also for your partners. So how do you deal with that aspect of it?
Yeah, that's very true as well. And I think the ecosystem thing has changed. When I compare it to, like, let's say 10 years ago and today you cannot play a command and control ecosystem in a sense. You can be the orchestrator of an ecosystem, but it should be a win-win ecosystem. So you can create demand for your products and services, but you should respect the fact that your partners might also want to create for their own specific solutions and their own specific services, and you should be fine with that. If you think of them only as a reseller channel today, I think it's bound to fail.
Right. David, how about on, because you get involved a lot on the cybersecurity side, and
we do.
I mean, apart from the importance of it, we also have the security aspect of what's happening. How do you see it from your side?
Well, I think there's a couple aspects when we think of ecosystems and marketplaces. One is the end user, right? The actual organization, whether it's a local water treatment plant or a member of critical infrastructure or a small to mid-sized business. Sometimes they're not even aware that these marketplaces are available, right? And then they are just seeking out a solution, and they only have the choice of the people that they find within their geography. So as been mentioned, the economies of scale and the ability to scale and really find the best talent to perform those services, they very well might not be in your geography. And being able to leverage these marketplaces, not only does it speed up the sales cycle, but it gives them better choices and more qualified choices. That's what I found, and really driving awareness that these marketplaces exist and that the ecosystem itself. And what was mentioned about, working together and not just being a VAR, it's absolutely critical, because when we think about it, it's really about synergies, right? A lot of us may do 15, 20 things very well, right? Some of the, like, let's say 3 or 4 of them, or even 5, may overlap with somebody else, but we can all partner together and figure out what is in the best interest of the customer, right? And then combine and leverage each other's best strengths to actually form together and give a holistic solution, rather than individually just going and meeting with them outside of a marketplace or an ecosystem and then trying to sell them everything. That's really not in the best interest of the customer oftentimes, because your strengths and your ability may not lie there for the customer. And geography really plays a part, especially here in the United States, because sometimes some of the best talent isn't located right locally, right? And you need to be able to scale.
Right. Lisa, do you have an example of one that you were involved in, and how did it go?
Sure. And I guess just to kind of take a little step back and add on to what David is saying, one of the things that I'm seeing at Ericsson, and I mentioned it earlier, was that partner to partner connection. But David's absolutely right. We're seeing more and more customers who are multinational, right, in what they're looking for. And that can look and feel very differently depending on who that customer is. It could look like they want to buy in the US, but deploy globally, or it could look like they want a solution, which is a cross-vendor solution, but have their subsidiaries or their European HQ buy locally. And so one of the things that we've just recently launched at Ericsson from a partner to partner connection perspective, which really helps drive this partner to partner connection and this ecosystem of partners, is something we call Pro Services Connect. And so what David was saying is right. You can have a partner who is really great at selling and maybe doing some rudimentary installation, while others are really great at climbing towers or IB Wave. They have IB Wave expertise and everything. And so we've created this program to drive partners for that connection. We launched it 3 or 4 months ago, and we're already starting to see it as a sales enablement. And the interesting thing about this connection of partners is that it's vendor, like, obviously we're very focused on it from an Ericsson perspective, but the information that we're gathering from these Pro Services Connect partners also looks at industry licenses and other capabilities. And so as our solutions, right, we have branch IoT and mobility, but we also have some really complicated solutions out there, like our EP 5G solution, which you need to have a carrier relationship. You need to have certain licenses. You need to understand radio waves, et cetera. We're utilizing those Pro Services Connect partners to help make that happen. And we're seeing that success. Some of those connections were happening before our program, right? But it was kind of like searching for like a purple unicorn, if you will. And now we're trying to simplify that.
Right. Just one question on that, Lisa, before I go to the same question to the other people, is that how much is this is really, would you say is embedded in the strategy now of Ericsson? And how much of it is actually articulated to the ecosystem that you're trying to form? And do you have a good alignment from the point of view of the way that they're looking at their strategies and you're looking at your strategies? How's that going on?
It's very embedded, and if I think about it kind of from a simplistic perspective, our products require a carrier relationship and data plans, right? The idea is that you're cutting the wire wherever you can. That's the kind of that next step. And so our partners across the globe have these relationships. Ericsson obviously has very long-standing relationships with carriers as well. But we're also starting to see it in terms of, embedding our solutions in other products, like a coin machine or at a stadium or something like that. And that's where not only is it a value-added reseller or an MSP, but there's an EOEM relationship, a carrier relationship, and then, of course, the installation piece. And you can't be successful without all of those components.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Serdar, do you have any particular example on your side where you're proud of how it turned out in your area?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, of course, looking at my experience, I would say HP's partner ecosystem. So HP came to Turkey like 35 years ago. And from the very first day, we have invested into the ecosystem, starting with distributors, then with commercial partners and retail partners. And when I think of an ecosystem, Mike, I think like, it's like the roots of a tree. So, Turkey is a very volatile market. We made many ups and downs in the last 15 to 20 years. We're just going through economical challenges in the last couple of months as well. So I think one of the factors which kept HP in its place and which kept us our power in the country is the business ecosystem, the partner ecosystem that we have created. Now, they have the flexibility, they have the agility, they have the capabilities that we don't have. And especially in times of crisis and volatility, that really plays a key role for us to sustain our business in the country. Mm-hmm. And I've also taken some Middle Eastern jobs, Middle Eastern Africa jobs. I would say the same thing for these countries and regions as well. If you have the right business ecosystem around you, you can stand with the storms. You can keep your place. Otherwise, it's very easy to have very negative business results in a very short time.
Yeah, and it highlights the importance of relationships and all of this, personal relationships. I mean, because these are business partners, but they're also friends, and you care about them, and they care about you. And that's
I think relationships, right? Flexibility, and the financial capabilities as well. Because as multinational companies, we have certain strict rules and regulations when it comes to financial terms and conditions. And if you have the right business ecosystem around you, especially when cash is the king, when interest rates are high, when access to money is limited, your business ecosystem helps you navigate your way in the economy.
Yeah.
And financial is part of the game, financial terms and conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's part of the solution. David, from your side, how have you got a nice story to tell?
Yeah, I mean, I've got several examples, but I mean, the best one is a manufacturer that has multiple locations, and some in another country beside the U.S. And without a marketplace in an ecosystem and those synergies in place, what would happen is the service provider, whatever the need might be. In this situation, it was not only cybersecurity services, but there was a lot of on-site technology rollouts. There was a lot of infrastructure improvements, and the locations were in several countries. And if it was just up to one vendor, the one vendor would engage, tell them that they could do it, and then the one vendor would have to go and source those resources outside the country, and it would be hit or miss, right? So it's really not in the best interest of the client. But by working as part of a ecosystem and in a marketplace, they were able to actually get vetted partners that would do synergistic services in other locations because their strength lied in those other countries.
Have you noticed that where these types of things work, what sectors do you find that it's easier to embed in an ecosystem, and other sectors where it's actually quite difficult to do it?
Personally, I found it I mean, this is the space I live in, is the IT and the IT rollouts, improvements, adoption of emerging technologies, and then cybersecurity layers. While the cybersecurity layers could clearly be done remote and go far and wide because it's centralized and you're looking at the log ingestion and the traffic and things. The rollout of the technologies, and whenever there is on-site requirements, and then the work alongside the ISPs and the internet providers and the SD-WAN groups and solutions, that's really where I've seen it play out really well.
Mm-hmm. And where it tends to fall apart, what areas would you say that would be?
It's a great question. So where it tends to fall apart sometimes is in the in some of the more consultative, when it involves quite a bit of consultative advice, I think it's important where I've seen it fall apart is a customer may get a couple different roles of guidance from the different players, right? And what's key is that agreement up front. We're going to advise on this part, you guys advise on that part, and then everybody wins, not just from the vendor side, but from the client side. So it's one cohesive message.
Right. It's interesting because also I found over the years that, and I'm sure that you've all had these situations. I could be speaking to somebody in the morning and they're a client, and in the afternoon I can be speaking to a supplier, and then in the evening I can be actually speaking to somebody who's an absolute competitor, and actually they're all the same company. Because we're talking about quite large types of things. Lisa, how do you think that this is evolving? Because this is getting much more complex than the simple models that we had before. And how do you deal with that when sometimes these partners or people inside your ecosystem happen in other markets could be fierce competitors?
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head too. I mean, even inside of one company, especially a really large company and we've also experienced this, there's different organizations and they don't even talk to one another, right? And that can be true for a customer, a partner, a distie, like anybody. And so I think one of our jobs as we utilize the ecosystem is to even connect folks inside of their own organization, if you will, to help drive some of those synergies. And we've seen a lot of success from that perspective. I think generally, and this is every company is still kind of finding their footing after the pandemic, right? What is that organizational structure? And again, you could have someone in one part of the organization who wants to use this service provider or this partner or whatever that looks like. And someone over here is working on a similar solution, but wants to use different vendors or partners. And so having a really strong relationship with your partners and your distributors, the entire ecosystem, helps to drive those synergies and simplify for the customer. It's a little painful in the beginning, right? But that's the goal.
And the I always think of the elephant in the room is the horrible word called politics. I mean, how do you deal? I mean, the bigger the organization, the more the politics becomes, difficult, should we say?
Yeah, and I think that's where your strong relationship really makes a difference. I mean, everyone has politics to deal with, but by having those established and really transparent relationships, and just putting all cards on the table, and sometimes that's uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, that's how you come up with the best possible solution, portfolio, sale, whatever you want to call that. And again, it's not everyone's comfort spot, but without that complete transparency, which could be a cross vendor for that kind of end all solution, could be across partners, making those connections. That's the way you're successful.
Yeah. Serdar, the other word that comes up in my brain as well, apart from politics, is culture. That, and please, I mean, I've worked for American and European and Japanese and Israeli tech companies, so I'm not getting anybody or whatever, but there is a sort of like we know the way that we can operate in a particular area or in a particular way. I mean, here you are, Serdar, back into good old HP, and having to deal with the fact that your cultural environment is a very different one. How do you see that? How do you see ecosystems therefore from an emerging markets point of view?
Yeah, it reminds me of the famous saying from Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So coming back from the startup world to the big corporate multinational, of course it's difficult. It's different. And I think politics is directly related to the scale and to the layers in the organization. The more layers in the organization, I think there's more politics, because regions manage regions and then regions manage countries or a set of countries. The more layers, the more you're careful. So I think for any size of company, reducing the layers between the HQ and the country is a very critical thing to decrease the level of politics in the organization. But on the other hand, looking at HP, what brought me back to HP, despite being a multinational big company, it still has a human side of it. I mean, it still leaves room for the individual. It still leaves room for your flexibility, for your creativity, and you can put your stamp on things, at least at the field level, at the country level. I'm also looking at some other multinational large organizations, and they are very robotic. They have very strong systems and procedures, but they leave almost no room to the individual. For me, the right culture, even in a large company, is to have the right set of systems, and especially now today, digital systems, but you should have this human side, and you should leave this room to the individual to put a bit of creativity, a bit of flexibility, a bit of individual flavor into the game. And I think HP is getting a high score, at least from me on that perspective.
Okay, well, it's always interesting because I find it's quite I spent years trying to understand different cultures and why people react in the way that they do. And although I have a lot of grey hair, I still haven't really worked it out. So I'd like to move on to marketplaces. I mean, there are obviously some very well noted and adorable marketplaces out there. Microsoft is doing a lot of things these days. Salesforce. I mean, we can think of a number of them. But where do you see marketplaces these days, and how do they, their role and their fit into this whole landscape that we're talking about? Lisa, do you want to kick off on that one?
Sure. I think marketplaces are critical to everyone's success. And I think we'll see the evolution of those happen over the next 5 or 10 years as the solutions become more complicated. I think the here and now, it enables really ease of business for partners and customers alike. The last thing someone wants to do is to have to pick up the phone and order a few pieces of whatever it is they need. We're already seeing the evolution of some of those marketplaces that say, hey, if you're interested in this technology, you should consider X, Y, and Z. So from Ericsson perspective, maybe they're buying a branch device and it offers, hey, you need, think about a cable and an antenna. We'll see that evolve to even further than that, which kind of is a use case scenario, which says, hey, so you're buying this. Are you buying it for X, Y, or Z? And then start offering cross-vendor solutions as well. Even on a personal level, right? Where do we go and shop a lot of times? It's the e-commerce platforms. And we're seeing customers and partners doing that as well. It's also interesting because not only are the marketplaces kind of standalone, if you will, but more and more partners are integrating with those as well, so that as they make these customer solutions inside of their own systems, it's feeding those orders directly to the marketplace without any manual intervention, right, and they get the right discounts, or if they have deal registration, it still qualifies them for various incentives that ultimately help with, their profitability.
Yeah, and I think there's also this trust aspect, because if you have to go and buy something, I don't know, if I have to go and buy something from Turkey, either I would know somebody, or I go to a marketplace where there is a known, trusted certification, and therefore that just makes it easier for me. So
yeah, I think you're right, and I think these marketplaces allow for purchases in local currency as well, right? It offers, it's that transparent credit, credit card swipes, if a company is using, it's below their purchasing threshold, and they can just do that credit card swipe, if you will. So it offers a lot of flexibility, and it's an international expansion model.
David, from your point of view, do you see the emerging importance of marketplaces, or are they less needed?
No, I think they're more needed now than ever before, because through the democratization of technology, you have even smaller companies that are doing business with their customers who have multiple locations all over the globe. And there's no way that a smaller regional, whatever the service would be, but especially in the technology space, they're really not going to be able to have that expertise and understand the culture and the transaction and the currency and all of the political maneuvers. So by leveraging a marketplace and being part of it, they're able to scale. I really don't think it's that complicated personally. Like, I really see it as an analogy to the Amazons or even the Etsy marketplaces of the world, because people can go and choose vendors that they can see reviews from and prior customers that had similar things that they need done, and people that have had good experiences. And it's just a really smart way of buying, and it shortens the sales cycle too, right? Like, nobody wants a bunch of individual vendors taking up all their time and resources with 1,000-page PowerPoint slide, etc. Right? They're able to actually go in and get SKUs for exactly what they're looking for, and have it just be much more seamless, much more professional.
Yeah, and you create this preferred network.
Yeah.
And it just shortcuts everything that you need to do. So I think it is very powerful. Serdar, down again on from the point of view, you're the voice of the smaller market or the emerging market. How do you see marketplaces in your area?
I would like to talk there. First, on marketplaces, they're working with big online retailers. One is Amazon, by the way. And they also work with a very large Turkish company called Nasdaq. They're online retailers. The surprising thing, when you look at them, their domain sales, retail sales, they call it, sales from their domain, and their marketplace sales, if you look at them separately, their marketplace sales are much larger, and they're having a much bigger traffic on the marketplace. So if you think about it, in the whole world, they will want to sell from their own domain, from their own channel, because they are getting a commission from the marketplace as they don't control everything. But consumers want this diversity, they want this versatility, want different offerings, several offerings from several sellers. So I think it's getting used to marketplaces and the wide area of choice in the marketplaces, services, products. So from that perspective, also in emerging markets, marketplaces are performing better than single vendors or single sellers, let's put it that way. Secondly, I mean, if you go back to the business ecosystem, I cannot think of business ecosystems today without a digital infrastructure. So things are getting digitized and automated, and you have to build a digital marketplace or digital portal to run the ecosystem or to be part of the ecosystem. If you look at HP today, we have a partner program called Amplify, and Amplify has a portal. In the past, we also had some digital portals or websites in the day, but it was mainly for tracking your targets, tracking your rebates, things like that. Today, we are getting data from them. We are getting data from customers. So the portal is also acting like a predictive source and prescriptive source. So we're saying things like, this is 4 years old, it's time that they will replace it, maybe we should get in touch with the customer. This warranty contract is expired, you already contact the customer. In the prescriptive side, we're looking at data, we're combining different sets of data, and we're coming up with recommendations like, if you design a marketing campaign like that, then probably you will send that much units to the customers. So now I think this digital portal is a two-way street. You share data, you get data from them, and then you get analytics and go back to them with different kinds of proposals and suggestions. So I think that's the second part of it. The business ecosystem, the digital portal, and data sharing, data analytics today is not an effective business ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, everything is these days is data. Is data driven, is we have to have the data, we have to be able to share the data, we have to be able to secure the data, David. I'm sure you have a lot of things that you can talk about from that point of view. Mm-hmm. And because everything is around this data, and which is kind of like the, you know, magical, we need the data so that we can do everything. How the hell are we going to deal with this problem of sharing and securing data amongst a whole variety of people in different locations? And some of them are savvy to security, some of them are quite primitive from a security point of view. I think I'll throw that one towards David, actually, because I know that it's a big it's a big deal in your life at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And you know, the same best practices would apply to a marketplace entity as it would to any individual organization, right? Location of the data, security and backup, immutable backing up of the data, as well as vetting and educating whenever there's financial transactions involved, and having just those systems and processes in place. I mean, I think you have to look at the marketplace like an entity, just like any other.
Yeah, but Lisa, I mean, because you actually are dealing with, let's face it, I mean, everything that you actually do is transference of data. I mean, whether it be one way or another. So, I mean, how do you see that these things in the future? How are we going to deal with it?
Well, I think that it's a really good opportunity. when you think about it, it's a way of democratizing what are best practices in certain parts of the world and bringing those skill sets to other parts of the world, right? You know, very similar to when you think of privacy rights, you know, a lot of the world looks to the UK and what they've done with GDPR, and they're trying to figure out how do we take the good intent there that they've developed and implemented in our country. Very similar to that is the rolling out of best practices in countries where it may not be required, but it would be a best practice. And having marketplaces where organizations can access that, right? Beginning with education and then learning about the reasons why these best practices are there, right? It's always a balance between convenience and security, but finding that right balance helps everybody. So,
Lisa, what would be your list of do's and don'ts when it comes to, you know, let's say I'm a young guy. I know it's difficult for you to think of me as a young guy, but anyway, let's say I'm a young guy starting off, I've got something interesting. I want to get involved with these things. How do I go about it to ensure that, number one, I'm going to be successful, but that I'm going to be able to have the opportunity?
So a young person coming in and trying to understand and gain momentum around marketplaces or even partner ecosystems, there's a lot of really great tools out there. And even though there's a lot of competition as well, I've never come across anyone in the industry that's not willing to help, support, and mentor, right? Which I think is really interesting, because you don't see that in every industry. I do think when we start talking about that balance between ease and kind of security that David was talking about, GDPRs being a really good one. Another piece of the equation as we look at marketplaces, especially for young people trying to capitalize on that, is making sure that they understand the local laws and regulations. We're seeing more and more differences in some of the countries, right? Whether the data has to reside in a particular country, or, can you have an instance of a marketplace, as an example, in a country, but host all that data somewhere else. And a lot of that is changing. We see that kind of continuously. It's just, I can even double click on that says, software, of course, has regulations, but when you're starting to also consider some of the hardware, so in my space, it would be radios, devices, those kind of things, is that product homologations and the requirements of those is also changing. So you start stacking on some complexity. And in order for someone, whether they're new to a marketplace or ecosystem or kind of just young in career, is making sure that you understand how others have navigated those items and done so collectively and together. That's the best way to approach it.
Yeah, and it was interesting because you said there's some good tools around that can help. Do you have any particular examples of tools that you would suggest that people should get hold of or look at?
I don't have any specifics that pop into my mind, but I do say the networking piece. So, reaching out to others is the best way. Some of the tools change over time, right? Just as a third party, there are third parties who have expertise in homologating and ramping up a marketplace in a particular country. And who's good today, that could actually change in 6 months or 12 months as some of the laws and regulations change. So you have to really make sure you're maintaining your network and that you're really ingrained and understand what's happening in particular countries.
So it comes down to, the basics of networks, relationships, and focus, I suppose, as well. And
yeah, exactly. I think in this kind of channel ecosystem environment, including marketplaces, your network and your relationships are some of the most critical pieces. I mean, and I can't tell specifics, but, just yesterday, I saw something in the news, was very vague about it. And I reached out to a colleague that I had worked with 6 or 10 years ago that was much more closely engaged with this particular company and got the information that I needed, right? And so those networks are really important to maintain.
Yeah. I think it's more than important. I think it's absolutely critical these days that you build and maintain networks. And that one of the things that I find is that people, because we're always so busy, and they, you have to have the discipline of saying, okay, 2 hours a week or whatever it is, I'm just going to dedicate to doing nothing else but working on my network and making sure that it's there when I need it. Because as you said, you suddenly had something, and luckily enough, you were able to get hold of the information very quickly, which is a lot of the times is not necessarily the case. The markets are also adapting and changing so much. I mean, you were talking there about post-COVID and everything else, and we saw the problems of supply chain. We also saw the changes that occurred I'm in Europe at the moment, and there's a huge push these days. Things like the semiconductor chips that are required and everything else. We don't want to be dependent upon things that are very, very far away. We want to bring them much more close to our marketplace and secure them. We've got on one side, we have this change in globalization that seems to be taking place. On the other side, we talked about data and security of data. I don't think that we can ignore the other perspective, which is AI, and what will that mean to it? It sounds like a hairy, scary monster, but I don't believe it is. But how do we navigate? How do people? You guys are experts. You've been doing it for hundreds of years. But for a lot of people, it's very, very difficult to know what's my next best action to take. Any ideas?
Well, I think one of the surprises is that a lot of end user organizations don't even know that these marketplaces exist necessarily. And I think that becoming aware of what marketplaces exist in your area so that you can gain access beyond your local geography, I think that would be step one.
Why don't you think that they don't know about the market? Is it a
because I meet people all the time, at least in the space I'm in. I meet people all the time that still engage in one-on-one vendor evaluation as opposed to working through a marketplace.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say from an AI perspective, right, marketplaces, certainly there's an opportunity there, but even from a product perspective, right? And so we have an industry expert who is part of Ericsson. She's engaged with the US government, all that kind of stuff as it relates to AI. And we're starting to use AI to even do some of the simple troubleshooting, if you will, right? Through that. And I think we'll start seeing marketplaces also use some AI. And it will take a little bit of time because it requires some refinement so that someone could say, hey, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. And for the marketplace, right, to use artificial intelligence to be able to offer up, well, people with that similar scenario are looking at these things, and this is some of what you need to consider. I think it's going to be really cool and exciting in the next few years.
Wouldn't that actually narrow choice though for people, or do you see it as it's going to be a positive addition?
I actually think it'll be positive. A lot of it will be through some trials and tribulations, right? The last thing anyone wants to do is reduce the options, right? There's, we don't ever want a monopoly. But there's a lot of really great solutions out there. And as AI gets more and more intelligent and vendors, customers, marketplaces start using AI, I think it will afford opening the doors for some of those conversations, right? David mentioned, sometimes it's just a customer has one view with one vendor. And we talked earlier too about partner to partner connections, and then that it's a whole platform or solution that the customer actually needs, and AI will help monetize and push customers in that direction, which will help everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Mike, if I may add to it, I think up to now, all mega technology trends, they created more good than harm. Of course, there are risks and threats of every mega trend. But when it comes to AI, my thinking, probably it's the most controversial mega trend we faced up to now. So it's for corporations, it means huge productivity gains. For consumers, you might have the capability of a Fortune 500 CEO assistant with you. You can do many things with AI. But at the same time, the risks are there as well. There are several risks linked to AI, especially to generative AI. So I think we'll see as we go. I listened to Eric Schmidt's video on YouTube. and he's claiming that we haven't seen anything yet, and the next 3 years there'll be an incredible wave of change. So I'm more cautious on AI than anything else we have seen up to now in the technology world. There are many positives, but there are big risks as well.
Absolutely, and that's why at the institutes, we do a lot of work on AI for good, and it's. I mean, in Brussels just actually enacted for the first time. The EU now has the AI Act of which categorizes different types of usage of AI into minimal risk and higher risk and an absolute no-no. And I think that this is, the trend. I believe is not so much on the development of it, although I have concerns about that. But I think that on the implementation side, there will definitely be legislation coming out, which is going to limit some of the excesses, hopefully, that we're seeing at the moment. I mean, it's not for nothing that the institute is spending a lot of time and effort looking at these twin things of AI and cybersecurity. And David, I think that they're kind of beginning to merge very, very quickly because, well, we know that critical infrastructure and how do you make sure that it's not being attacked, and then we've got quantum computing coming along and all sorts of things like that. So lots of challenges, but lots of opportunities as well, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, in the field of cybersecurity, AI it's clearly being used on the cybercrime front, right? In terms of deepfake technologies and social engineering, as well as the creation of advanced malware and polymorphic malware that changes as it moves along. And they create a lot more risk, but a lot of the physical tasks that defenders have to do, like analysis of logs, searching for anomalies, all of this, AI is clearly bolstering those defenses and making it much more real time, which is excellent.
Yeah.
I do have concerns around AI as it relates to smaller companies and younger people as well, right? So the younger generation has really very much grasped, they grew up with iPhones, all of those kind of things, and some of that fake information out there. And then also, I think there's risk for corporations across the globe with employees trying to use AI to simplify their personal job. So it'll be interesting to see what the legislation does from that perspective.
I mean, what I've been doing quite a lot recently is working with smaller companies and saying, look upon AI as, as an assistant. So you need a sales assistant, you need a marketing assistant, you need a production assistant, whatever. So make it part of your team rather than something out there, and learn how to actually use it in the correct way, as you would do with any team member that you would have in your company. And it'll be interesting to see how it shapes up. Serdar, you were about to butt in, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was just about to say that data privacy for companies is also a big part of the game. So if you look at the industry, our industry today, us, Microsoft, Intel, our competitors, we are betting big time on the AI PC. So what's an AI PC? It is just a third processor called an NPU. But the main topic is many companies don't want to send their data to the cloud and make it part of a big learning algorithm while they're working on an analysis, while they are working on a report and stuff. They want to do they want their employees to use the AI tools on their clients and do the computing on the client only. So there are many things that are coming on board. Also latency, it's another factor, and the cost of the bandwidth. And I was listening to, I think it was somebody from Google. They are now talking about nuclear reactors to be able to power the AI infrastructure. So it will require a huge amount of energy. So there are many things, there are many implications that should be taken into consideration. while using AI.
Yeah, but it's there. We can't ignore it, and it will certainly have an effect on marketplaces and on ecosystems. And it's something that, as I said, is that like we have with data. How do we get the data? How do we share the data? How do we secure the data? And you've just brought up the obvious one, is that well, are we going to have it in the cloud somewhere? And what does that mean for everybody? So these are the things that. If I, because we're coming to the end of our time, we've got about another 5 minutes, and then we have to break off. But what would be your final thoughts about what would be the next best step that you think that we should be taking when it comes to the positive use or the positive employment of ecosystems and marketplaces? Who wants to kick off on that one?
Maybe I can. Yeah, please, Lisa, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
All right. So I don't think there's anything super innovative that we can collectively do. We have a partner advisory council, which is a really good example, where we're meeting 4 times a year, 1 time in person and then three times. And I think from an ecosystem perspective as vendors, that's super critical. I think there are key industry events as well, where everyone continues to talk. I do think we'll see a lot of evolution in the ecosystem. It remains to be seen a little bit. I mean, we've all talked about services and security and marketplaces, but where we are in 5 to 7 years will certainly be a journey, and that open communication is really critical.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Serdar?
Yeah, I would like to respond to it from an emerging markets view. I think I'm the one representing emerging markets here. So I think business ecosystems are important and will continue to be important in our markets because relationships are relatively more important in our market. Skills are more limited or not easy to find the right skills. So you need an ecosystem to surround yourself, and you need complementary services and things like financing. Also for emerging markets, many companies today have business ecosystems, but they need to work on digitizing and automating the ecosystem. And they need to work on the data strategy. How will they share the data, and how can they do the right data analytics that can generate the right insights so that they can improve their business? So ecosystems are important and will be important in emerging markets. Digitizing, automating the ecosystems and utilizing the data in the right way from this digitalization will be key going forward. And of course, AI will be part of the game when it comes to data and data insights.
I think you're absolutely right. And I would say one other thing that we all collectively need to be looking at is the technology and the evolution of what you might call a partner tool stack, right? Is making sure that we're sharing the information, sharing the data in a very usable way. And infrastructure investment for any company is always a hard one, but without that, right, even in emerging markets, it makes everyone's job more difficult.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, I would encourage members of critical infrastructure, small to mid-sized businesses, as well as obviously larger enterprise organizations that have a multinational footprint. Clearly, they're usually already familiar with marketplaces. But I would encourage some of those that are not aware that these marketplaces exist to reach out and to look at them for all of the benefits that we've talked about today. And then for the vendors participating in them, I think they need to have an open mind and to find synergies, right? That they can play in part of it. So that way it just is always in the best interest of the actual customer.
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, I thank you very much. I mean, I think it's been a fascinating talk, and I hope it's for other people as well. I would like to thank you for participating. Anybody who's interested in knowing more about the Tutoria Breda Institute, please go to the website and you can have a look at what we're doing. And I wish you all continued health and happiness, and I'm sure we'll talk again at some time in the future.
Yes.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks.
You all.
Thank you.